Insanity is typically a word used to describe the state of being seriously mentally ill or madness in some cases, which is why I think that word is not what I want to use to describe this situation, as I think pandemonium might fit this better. Recently, a lot of news has been coming out about a certain franchise in the NFL known as the New Orleans Saints, which I personally don't care about that much because I'm not even that big a fan. I really don't know that much about them. I mean, it's whatever. There's specifically been two people that I would like to talk about. That being Derek Carr, who is the current QB1 of the New Orleans Saints, and Michael Thomas, who used to be the wide receiver 1. Now, most people probably have already heard about this news or have been, in the loop. But with all the hoopla that's been going on about it, I can't resist not taking a deep dive in this. It's just so juicy, so good. So 2 days ago, St. Michael himself made some surprisingly unsurprising tweets saying, "Dude scary and panic and just throw the ball. Get him the F out of here. He's so ass. Dude tried to lie and say I was jealous of them, making Chris wide receiver 1. Whole time he can't even get him a decent ball. He need his ass whooped. They fired all them coaches trying to cover his flaws up. He's still doing the same shit." Now, in case you can't tell, he's very obviously talking about Derek Carr. Now, I'll be the first to admit, when the Saints picked up Derek Carr, I was somewhat excited because I feel like out of all the available free agents, he was probably the best choice. Now, I have since then repented on that sin and that belief, so I feel like I have paid my dues. I've done my crime. But again, I really don't know that much about the Saints. I'm not that big of a fan, so it really doesn't matter anyways. But as hilariously out of context some of these tweets might sound to people, he's not wrong. He's really not. And a lot of you may be thinking, oh, well, why is he saying this? Some of you may be thinking this seems so out of the blue. Like, where did this come from? He's not even a saint anymore. And to that, I say, let me present you with the evidence that has been brought forth. Oh, snap me the ball. Oh, okay, here we go. Oh, Christopher looks really open. Here you go. Ka-ka, boosh. Where should I throw this? I think I'm going to throw it. Oh, look. Chris is wide open again. Ka-ka, boom, boom. I can't wait for them to snap the ball and let me throw it to someone. Oh, Christopher, here you go. Ka-ka, boosh. Now, to the untrained eye, you might not see anything particularly wrong with that video, other than the fact that a man might have died. But let me show it to you through a football player's eyes. Now, I know it might be hard to tell if there's anything wrong considering that there's a man lying dead possibly on the field right now, but there's a lot wrong with what happened with this play. And I feel like Michael Thomas's criticism here is pretty justified, being that he has as many injuries as there have been shit in toilets. I feel like he is allowed or has the professionally trained eye to know when there's shit smelling throughout the air, like something ain't right there. QB1 is a very important position in football. You're the leader. You gotta take charge of your team and really, push them into the right direction. And I think that those traits are kind of everything that Derek Carr lacks as a QB. Now, there have been a lot of terrible QBs recently and in the past, and I'm sure that they will continue to be a trend. But the lack of foresight in this throw is what's really alarming. Again, to the untrained eye, that play might not look any more serious than just like a really big hit and Chris Olave just taking a punch of the ages, as some might say. But let's go back and look at it and just take note of a couple things. If we take a look at this throw, you'll notice that it was a little over the head, even a little bit behind them, so already not looking good in Derek Carr's favor. If you take an even closer look, you'll notice that there are more men ready to protect that ball than if there were an e-girl in a Call of Duty lobby. There are 3 people ready to bury Chris Olave 6 feet under, and by God do they. They hit that man so hard that he goes more limp than my dick when they show Taylor Swift on the screen for the 50 millionth time. I mean, it is absolutely absurd that they even considered that hitting him that hard was a good idea. I mean, that was quite literally a Hail Mary of the century. And I know some of you may be thinking,
but Mr. Cinema, Mr. Dude, That's not a Hail Mary. Are you a sports ball acoustic?
And by design, you're correct. That isn't a Hail Mary. But by definition, I say otherwise. The whole reason that play is even called a Hail Mary is because that it's such a low probability play that you literally need to pray to Jesus or pray to Mary that anything successful comes out of it. That throw was such a Hail Mary that it was hailing anything but Mary. I think the only thing that ball might have been hailing was Hitler with how evil of a fucking throw was. That is the most hellish of Marys that I've ever seen in my life. I can't even believe that Derek Carr isn't getting locked up for attempted manslaughter after that throw. Hell, even attempted suicide. I mean, with the career that Chris Olave has been having with the Saints, he's probably been contemplating ending his career short anyways. So who's to say that that wasn't an assist right there alone? I mean, after a pass like that, you better pray to whatever you can conjure up that shit doesn't hit the fan quick. Hell, you better pray to Freak Bob and see if he can make some Twilight Zone shit happen to where Chris Olave doesn't become the new Tua of wide receivers. I think what's even crazier is the Panthers' reactions after the mounds of flags were thrown. I mean, their reactions were so uncalled for. They acted like they didn't just kill someone on live television. That would have been like if a man got convicted of murder and was surprised that he got literally any ounce of jail time. Like, what do you mean? What are you surprised about? And not too long after, you see a rush of people on the field, mostly medical team, checking to see if he was even still breathing. And out of all of that, they give you a close-up of the player that hit him, and he has a look of fear in his eyes, as if God might smite him right now for hitting Christ Olave that hard. He had a look as if Ghost Rider gave him the penance stare, and all it was showing him was this play over and over again until he couldn't even bear to witness it anymore. I mean, to me, to have a reaction like that as if you didn't just do something completely absurd is absurd, unironically. But to see Chris Olave walk out of the hospital with just a concussion is very nice to hear, considering it could have been a lot worse. Now, if we go back and take a look at Michael Thomas's tweets, you'll notice that he did send up a little prayers to Chris Olave, which I'm sure a lot of people appreciated to see. And I think that's very good sportsmanship with him, even though he had a hard falling out with the team. It just goes to show that it's not players' faults. You know, he's not holding a grudge against most of his teammates. However, speaking of Hitler, there is some news that has come out that has gotten not only New Orleans fans, but all Louisianians whipping out their gumbo pots and celebrating. Recently, former head coach Dennis Allen has gotten fired for having a career so bad that Burger King had to call in a report for identity theft. And as we can see, Michael Thomas was not too surprised about this, and neither was the rest of New Orleans. He also became the first coach in NFL history to be fired by two different teams, both times with the same starting quarterback. So if that's not saying something, I don't know what is. However, the Saints just couldn't let their fans have a fucking grain of happiness. As of 5 hours ago from this recording, they had traded their cornerback Marshawn Lattimore to the Commanders. That is probably the last thing Saints fans wanted to see. Arguably, the pillar of their team has now been traded to a team that possibly no one gives a shit about. Now, like I said earlier, I'm not a huge Saints fan or anything. It's just really sad to see that they just can't let their fans have an ounce of respect or happiness for them. And as crazy as these Michael Thomas tweets seem, I feel like in a lot of ways they are pretty justified. I think the way that Derek Carr has been playing and has been supposedly treating his teammates is just absolutely uncalled for. And I think the way that Dennis Allen had been coaching this team is arguably worse. Hell, I mean, the losing has gotten so bad that one of the Saints' own players tweeted out, "Hell, throw me in at QB. Shit, let's have something fun to watch." And I'd agree. I think a lot of Saints fans would agree that that would be, at the very least, fun to watch. Derek Carr has also become the first QB in history to lose to 31 different NFL teams. The only team he has not lost to is his previous team, the Raiders. And the fact that all of this has happened in hand with the loss to the Panthers is just tragic to see. As hard as it's going to be for Saints fans to stomach, I think it might be fair to say that the Saints have become the worst team in the NFL, at least for this season. With the bad QB outbreak, the can't keep players healthy, and them trading away practically the only pillar on their team keeping them afloat, or standing, it's fair to say that I think they're just going to tank this team so that they can attempt to get a number 1 pick, which I wish I could say is a good idea, but just because you get the number 1 pick doesn't mean you're guaranteed that something good is going to come from it. Picks flop all the time. It happens in a lot of sports, actually. Not all the time, to be fair, but it does happen often enough for it to not be something to necessarily rely on. Now, I'm no GM, and I probably never will be, but why not just experiment with the players you have? Throw in people that you aren't playing that much. See if you can find a hidden gem in your roster somewhere. You have players like Taysom Hill that you're willing to use anywhere. Why not see if you could do that with some other players? Hell, host an open tryout and see if you can find some crackhead off the streets that can throw a ball like an absolute piss missile. See if you can find a drugged out Roidzilla that he can tackle a man so hard that his balls will pop out of his asshole. You know, at this point, what do you have to lose? You know, you've already lost everything. But again, with all my yapping and nonsense out of the way, again, I am very glad to see that Chris Olave is healthy, or healthier than he could be. He just managed to walk away with a concussion, which I think is a lot better than what could have happened. I hope he doesn't become the Tua of wide receivers. I would like to not see that happen to such a talented player. I hope that the Saints can learn from this, try to be better. I hope that the players aren't getting too discouraged. I want them to know that, you know, we all care about them and we feel for what they're having to go through. And I hope that Derek Carr, out of all the people, learns the most from this. I don't think you want to go to jail for attempted manslaughter, especially in the sport you love. So maybe we calm down on the passes like that. And I pray for every Saints fan out there that they don't have any nightmares about Dennis Allen. You can go to bed knowing that that man is finally behind us. But anyways, my name is CinemaDood, and what the hell do I know?